Julien Ortiz, unemployed French fashion designer. At the time of the Normandy landing in June of 1944, the United States Marine Corps had 476,000 Marines. The great majority of these Marines were already in the Pacific or were headed in that direction. To the best of my knowledge, only 6 Marines were involved in an actual ground combat mission in the European theater during World War II. They are Sergeant Jack Risler, Sergeant Jack Bodner, Sergeant, I'm not sure about the light, Sergeant Fred Bruner, Sergeant Charles Perry, Gunnery Sergeant Robert Lavelle, and Major Pierre Julien Ortiz. Major Ortiz is the principal subject for my talk tonight. First, let me relate to you this officer's list of personal declarations. The Navy Cross, 2 awards. The Navy Cross is the second highest award available for members of the Naval Service. The Purple Heart, 2 awards. The Legion of Merit. The Order of the British Empire, awarded for rescue of downed RAF pilot. 5 awards. The Médaille des Blessés, the Médaille des Évadés, the Médaille Coloniale, the POW Medallion, Citation et l'Ordre de Régiment, l'Ordre du Brigade, the Usam Oulet, a Moroccan medal, and the Medal Métallier from 4 countries. Pierre Julien Ortiz was born in New York City on July 5, 1913. His father, Philippe, was French. His mother, Mary Louise, was Swiss. Pierre's parents separated when he was 5 years old. His father, Philippe, returned to France and became a publisher and editor of French Vogue magazine. His connection with the world of fashion later provided a cover for his son, Pierre. Mary Louise and the children, Pierre and Inez, moved to La Jolla, California. When the children became teenagers, their father, Philippe, insisted that they return to France for their education. Pierre was sent to boarding schools in France. Pierre was a good student, but he did not like school. At age 15, he ran away and served as a crew member aboard a merchant ship. He sailed to South America and then to the United States, where he visited his uncle, a DuPont by marriage. His uncle sent him back to school in France. By this time, Pierre spoke English, French, Russian, and German. Later, he added Arabic and Spanish. Pierre enrolled at college in Grenoble, France. If later you can come looking at the map of France, Grenoble is in the southeast corner of France in the French Alps. It was the site of at least 2 Olympic Winter Games. Grenoble and its surrounds in the French Alps became the site of Pierre's Marine Corps exploits later in life. In 1932, at age 15, Pierre left college with his Polish girlfriend, went to Marseille, and enlisted in the French Foreign Legion. He enlisted for a term of 5 years. France had forbidden foreigners to serve in its military. A way around this restriction was to join the Foreign Legion, which was based in Sidi Bel Abbes, Algeria. Recruits for the Foreign Legion customarily enlisted under an assumed name. Pierre enlisted under the name Makaska, which was his girlfriend's last name. After a year, a legionnaire can reclaim his original identity, and after 3 years can apply for French citizenship. If wounded in action, a legionnaire can apply immediately for citizenship Français par le sang versé, or French by spilled blood. Recruit training lasted 4 months and was harsh. However, Pierre was very athletic, was well suited to military discipline, and did well. Pierre resumed using the name Ortiz, and upon graduation joined the 1st Infantry Regiment. And then if you look on the collection of photographs I gave you on side A, you'll see a photograph of Pierre Ortiz in his Foreign Legion uniform, as well as mounted on a camel. By February 1933, Ortiz was a corporal serving at Sidi Bel Abbes. The Legion was fighting Muslim Berbers in the Atlas Mountains. In 1933, Ortiz suffered his first wound. He later was promoted to sergeant, and at the time was the youngest sergeant in the history of the Foreign Legion. Ortiz completed his enlistment in 1937 and was discharged from the Legion. He had risen from the rank of private to acting lieutenant in charge of an armored car squadron. He was offered a commission if he re-enlisted and became a French citizen. He declined. Ortiz returned to his former home in La Jolla, California, and began to work in the movie industry. He became a friend of producer John Ford. The Germans invaded Poland. England and France declared war on Germany. Ortiz went to Canada and signed on to the crew of a merchant ship which was bound for France. As the ship approached the French coast, a German U-boat surfaced and sank the merchant ship with its deck gun. Ortiz swam until he was rescued by a French ship. Ortiz re-enlisted in the French Foreign Legion in October of 1939. The Legion was recalled to France, and Ortiz went with them. He received a battlefield commission as a 2nd lieutenant in May of 1940 and was promoted to 1st lieutenant in June of 1940. In 1940, after withdrawing from a fighting position, Ortiz discovered that the gasoline stores had not been destroyed. Ortiz returned on a motorcycle and blew the fuel dump. He was spotted and shot in the hip by a German soldier. The bullet nicked his spine. He was paralyzed and captured by the Germans. The Germans believed him to be French and not American. A German doctor performed surgery which restored the use of his legs. His wound, however, caused him to experience chronic back pain for the remainder of his life. He was held in a POW camp for the next several months until October of 1941, when he tried to escape. He was chased by dogs and captured and put in a railroad boxcar filled with wounded and seriously ill. As the train came into Paris, Ortiz jumped off the train and made his way to his father's apartment, where he was able to get food and clothing. He then made his way through France, Spain, and Portugal, and then by ship to the United States, arriving on December the 7th, 1941. Both the French and the British offered him an immediate captaincy, which he turned down because he wanted to serve his own country. In January of 1942, he applied for a commission in the United States Army Air Corps, which for some unknown reason was put on hold, perhaps because of his spinal injury and the fact that he had been semi-starved for more than a year while a prisoner of the Germans. On June 22, 1942, Ortiz became tired of waiting, and he enlisted as a private in the United States Marine Corps. He was sent to boot camp at Parris Island. Now, those of you who've been there, picture this. At his first formation, Ortiz fell out wearing all of his French medals, and he received a chewing out as only a drill instructor could give. He was able to prove that he had earned his medals during his then 7 years as a combat soldier. His top sergeant, Stephen Marcus, said that Ortiz was the perfect recruit, followed every order, and did it all to perfection. The commanding officer of Parris Island reported to the commandant of the Marine Corps that Ortiz's knowledge of military matters was far beyond that of a normal recruit instructor. Ortiz's time as an enlisted Marine proved to be very short. On August 16, 1942, Ortiz was appointed as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. In 1942, Ortiz was sent to the New River Parachute Training School. He had already been trained as a parachutist in the Legion and had successfully completed 154 jumps. Ortiz commented that the Legion had its own way of jumping, but in the Marine Corps, it was the Marine Corps way or the wrong way. While at jump school, Ortiz met Sergeant Jack Risler and Sergeant John Bodner, who accompanied Ortiz in a later parachute jump into occupied France. Upon completion of his parachute training, Ortiz was assigned to the OSS by the Commandant of the Marine Corps to be under the command of Wild Bill Donovan. Operation Torch commenced on November 8, 1942, with the American landings in North Africa. Ortiz, by then, had been promoted to captain. He landed in London on December 31, 1942, and was ordered to report to Marine Colonel William A. Eddy, who was the naval attaché in the embassy in Tangiers, Morocco. It should be noted that the assistant naval attaché in Tangiers was Marine Captain Franklin Holcomb, who was the only son of Lieutenant General Holcomb, Commandant of the Marine Corps. Captain Holcomb and Captain Ortiz were close friends, and Ortiz thus had a direct communication link with the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Because of his background, the assignment given to Ortiz was to be an observer for the Marine Corps. His tasks were to report on Vichy France, the Free French, and the Arabs. In March of 1943, while on a reconnaissance patrol, he was shot in the right hand and right leg. He was evacuated to a field hospital near Tabessa in Tunis. The surgeon wanted to perform extensive major surgery upon the wounded hand, which Ortiz resisted. Ortiz left the hospital without permission and talked a friend into flying him to Algiers. Ortiz recovered without losing any part of his hand. The naval attaché, Colonel Eddy, became uncomfortable having one of his assistants engaged in combat operations. It was against the rules for a diplomatic representative to participate in military action. Ortiz reported to headquarters of Marine Corps on April 28, 1943. It soon appeared that Bill Donovan had other plans for Ortiz. On May 23, 1943, Captain Ortiz was attached to the OSS for duty in Europe. He became a member of the Jedburgh team, or Jeds, J-E-D-S. They were so named because of their training near Jedburgh, Scotland, of a British officer, an American officer, and an enlisted Frenchman who served as a radio operator. The mission of Ortiz's JED team was codenamed Union 1. The mission took place in southeast France, again near Grenoble. The participants in Union 1 were British Colonel H.H.A. Thackworth, Captain Ortiz, and Andrew Foucault. They parachuted into France from an RAF Halifax bomber during harsh winter weather in January of 1944. They wore civilian clothes but carried their uniforms with them. They were to liaison with the Maquis. The Maquis were French resistance fighters. Maquis is a Corsican word meaning scrub brush. After landing, the team members changed into their uniforms to meet with the Maquis. Each member of the JED team carried cyanide capsules in case they were captured. Ortiz was particularly at risk since he was 6 feet 2 inches tall, had previously been captured by the Germans, and was known by many French citizens. They made contact with the Maquis and were taken to safe houses. As his cover, Ortiz would use his father's trade of fashion design. He would claim to be an out-of-work fashion designer hanging out in the ski resorts in the French Alps. And the Jeds, the Maquis conducted ambushes, derailed trains, rescued at least 4 downed British airmen, blew up bridges, destroyed German aircraft on the ground, and disrupted German communications. On one occasion, they stole 10 Gestapo cars from a German motor pool to transport downed RAF pilots to Spain. Ortiz would wear his Marine Corps uniform while on these missions. On another occasion, Ortiz orchestrated the rescue of British Captain Murray Simon, who had been captured by the Germans and was awaiting to be sent to a POW camp. An official-looking Gestapo car drove up with Ortiz dressed as a German officer sitting in the back seat. Ortiz had stolen both the uniform and the car. Ortiz walked into the German headquarters, produced a sheet of official-looking documents, and drove off with Captain Simon. Another night, Ortiz and a complement of 140 Maquis attacked a troop train. The train was derailed by explosives. A battle ensued, and 47 Germans were killed without loss to the Maquis. During this battle, Ortiz appeared dressed in his full Marine Corps uniform. Ortiz was gathering information. As Pierre Julien, the fashion designer, he visited cafes and bars frequented by German officers with whom he conversed. He was able to pull this off because of his knowledge of fashion design and his language skill with French and German, and his willingness to buy drinks for the German officers who believed him to be a safe drinking companion. One evening, in a bar, members of the division whom Ortiz and the Marquis had derailed were bragging about recent combat with members of the Marquis. "Yes, but we didn't get the American swine who leads them," a Nazi captain said grimly. "There is a fat reward for him, but no one seems able to catch him. Well," as he drinks a toast, "here's to bagging a Schweinhund," said the Nazi officer. They also cursed the Allies, the United States President Franklin Roosevelt, and the United States Marine Corps. Ortiz had enough. He excused himself, returned to his safe house, dressed in his uniform, and covered it with his raincoat. He returned to the bar, ordered drinks for all, drew his pistol, and removed his raincoat. "A toast," announced Ortiz to the President of the United States. His leveled firearm assured that the glasses were emptied. "A toast to the Marine Corps," and once again, glasses were drained. And disappeared into the night. When asked later about not killing any of the Germans in the bar, Ortiz explained that by keeping them alive, he had done much more damage to their cause in both their eyes and the eyes of the French. The fact that he moved among them with impunity was far worse than killing them. Ortiz was ordered to return to England in May of 1944. He was promoted to major and was awarded the Navy Cross for his work during Union I. The OSS had another assignment in mind. This operation was codenamed Union II, into the Grenoble-Albertville area of southeast France. The particular drop was made on August the 16th, 1944, about 2.5 months following the Normandy landing. Union II coincided with Operation Dragoon, which was the Allied invasion of the Marseille-Toulon region of southern France. If I'll show you this on the map quickly. Grenoble region, in Albertville region he's acting in, and here is Toulon and Marseille just directly south on the Mediterranean coast. Period of time, that's the summer of 1944, Marines in the Pacific were taking Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and Peleliu. La Grande Parachute. On this jump, Ortiz was accompanied by Sergeant John Bodner, Sergeant Jack Rissler, with whom he had trained at the New River Parachute School. The team also included Sergeant Charles Perry, Sergeant Fred Brunner, Captain Frank Coolidge, United States Army, and Gunnery Sergeant Robert LaSalle. They jumped, if you look at side B of that photograph, you'll see a picture of the Union II participants. And at the top of the page, I forgot to mention, is a picture of Ortiz in his Marine Corps dress or summer uniform. La Grande Parachute. They jumped from an altitude of 400 feet. They jumped from this low altitude to make it more difficult for the Germans to count the number of parachutes. In addition to the parachutists, over 2,000 containers of weapons, ammunition, explosives, medical supplies, and rations were dropped for the Marquis. The mission of this drop was to arm, organize, and train the Marquis. Sergeant Perry's parachute failed to open, and he was killed on impact. Gunnery Sergeant LaSalle was injured severely on landing and was taken to a safe house by the Marquis. This left Ortiz, Bodner, Brunner, Captain Coolidge, and Rissler as the Union II team. The Germans brought in the 157th Mountain Division to search for the parachutists. The local inhabitants told the Germans that several battalions of paratroops had landed. The next several days were spent dodging German patrols who were seeking large numbers of the Maquis supported by American paratroops. The team made its way to the village of Centron, crossed a bridge over the Isère River, and was approaching the National Highway. At that moment, a German troop convoy came around a curve on the highway en route to Italy. The team was caught in the open and a gun battle ensued. Sergeant Brunner and Captain Coolidge escaped into the river. The Germans were near battalion strength. During the battle, the Germans began to spray the village of Centron with machine gun fire. In the recent past, German SS units had liquidated entire villages suspected of supporting resistance fighters. Ortiz proposed to the Germans that he and his men would surrender if they were given assurance that the village of Centron would be unharmed. The German commander was a Major Kolb, K-O-L-B. He was a professional soldier and not SS. Major Kolb had been captured by United States Marines during World War I and treated well. He respected United States Marines. Major Kolb gave his word that Centron and its people would not be harmed. The surrender negotiations were observed by Fernand Ball, a young boy who later became mayor of Centron. Hitler had ordered that all captured OSS agents were to be immediately executed, but the cover used by Ortiz, Bodner, and Riesler were that they were paratroops from Operation Dragoon, whose transport plane had been blown off course prior to their jump. Major Kolb thought he had been facing at least a company-sized unit and found it hard to believe that his opposition had consisted of only 3 men. Major Kolb refused demands from both the Gestapo and the SS to turn his prisoners over to them in 1944, finally ending up in Turin, Italy. They were then moved to Stalag 7A near Mossberg, Germany, outside of Munich. From there, they were moved to Marlag near Bremen, where naval prisoners were held. On April 10, 1945, the Marlag camp commander received orders to move his prisoners by an 8-day march to Lübeck in Germany, which was about a 100-mile march. The column scattered, and Ortiz escaped and tried to make his way back to Allied lines. After wandering around for about a week, he found himself back at Marlag. The Germans were gone, and the prison camp had been taken over by British prisoners. Because of the chaos on the outside, Ortiz concluded that he was safer off in prison. So he walked in and rejoined the prison camp. On April 29, 1945, the Marlag prisoners heard the sound of a bagpiper approaching, riding on a Sherman tank. The Marlag camp was rescued by the British. On June 27, 1945, Ortiz, Bodner, Riesler, and LaSalle were transferred to the Far East Theater to be inserted into Indochina by the OSS. The Japanese surrendered on September 2, 1945. The OSS was disbanded by the executive order of President Truman on October 1, 1945. Ortiz and his men did not travel to Indochina. Major Ortiz was awarded his second Navy Cross on May 8, 1946. It was for his service during Union II. Major Ortiz was separated from active duty in 1946, but remained in the reserve until March 1, 1955, when he was promoted to colonel and retired. In post-war civilian life, he married, fathered a future Annapolis graduate Marine Corps lieutenant colonel, and rejoined the movie industry through his friendship with producer John Ford. During the 1950s, Ortiz appeared in supporting roles in 12 O'Clock High, Spy Hunt, When Willie Comes Marching Home, Sirocco, Retreat Hell, Jubilee Train, King Richard and the Crusaders, Son of Sinbad, 7th Cavalry, Rio Grande, and The Wings of Eagles. The last two movies were John Wayne movies. According to his son, Ortiz was a terrible actor, but greatly enjoyed acting. When Colonel Ortiz was 72 years old, there was one last endeavor to serve his country. The Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks occurred in 1983. Colonel Ortiz noted the numerous hostage takings by Muslim extremists and was appalled by the hijacking of TWA Flight 847 in June of 1955, where the crew and 157 passengers were held prisoner, and an American naval diver was executed and thrown onto the tarmac in Beirut. Ortiz wrote to Secretary of State George P. Shultz offering to exchange places with any hostage that was then being held by the Islamic Jihad. The intrigue proposed by Colonel Ortiz was to free an innocent hostage and instead give the enemy a dying man who had been diagnosed with cancer. His letter to Secretary of State Shultz went unanswered. Colonel Ortiz died on May 16, 1988, at the age of 75. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. In 1944, on the 50th anniversary of Le Grand Parachute, the town center of Centron, France, was renamed Place Pierre Ortiz. The mayor was Fernand Ball, who as a young boy had witnessed the surrender of the three Marines. Each year, on May 16th, the anniversary of the death of Colonel Ortiz, the village of Centron, France, lowers its flags to half-staff. Thank you.